If you're one of those poor souls who enjoys their video games with a good story, well, first, I gotta help you, and second, you probably wonder why are most video game stories just bad. There lies the problem. What even is a good video game story? That's what I want to find out as I break down the game with classic Hollywood script coverage. Yeah, I know, Hollywood itself ain't doing so good right now, but the methods, when applied properly, have given us some of the best stories ever told, and I've written a few features and pilots to see how the same coverage can improve stories in video games. But your damn scripts did not sell. Beginning with Psychonauts 2, the very reason I started this series, because Psychonauts 2 is in that wonderful Goldilocks zone where story and gameplay come together to form a greater whole. The praise it garnered is well deserved, but I'll show you how the game's story could have been even better. So before we start, fair warning, there will be massive spoilers for Psychonauts 2 and a few movies which have been listed in the description. Be sure to check that out just in case. So let's not waste any time further and jump straight into
Emotional damage.
the game. The game opens up with our hero Rasputin Aquaro, or simply Raz, who dreamed of becoming a Psychonaut only to end up trapped in a mundane desk job at the Psychonauts headquarters, where each day is the same old until it's inevitably axed as part of a downsizing measure, and left with only one option.
People do crazy shit when they get fired.
But there is no falling down for Raz. As it turns out, it was all just a ruse, designed to trick Dr. Lobato into revealing who forced him to kidnap the director of the Psychonauts, Truman Zanardo.
You are following me. This was all a trick.
I'm not Employee of the Year.
This is the setup for the game. Crazy delusionaries want to resurrect Maligula using necromancy. Maligula was a bit of a baddie, to say the least.
She was a monster, a ruthless, power-hungry psychic who drowned hundreds of her own countrymen. Nevertheless, she still has her loyal followers to this day.
And that wraps our opening sequence. It is just perfect. The game's opening follows what I like to call play, don't show. And if you can't play, then always show, don't tell. I view screenwriting and game design as brothers for a simple reason. Both are dealing with hyper-reality, unzipped from the collective unconscious and void of the mundane. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. Let me give you a practical example. For screenwriters, that boils down to the first 10 pages. Everything has to be set up by page 10. Why? Because you cannot waste the audience's time in hyper-reality, unless that is somehow part of the story. But even then, you're not really wasting their time, you're just setting it up for a greater payoff. If you wondered why 10 pages,
'Cause 10 sounds official.
if it's good enough for Moses, it's good enough for you. Also because the unwritten rule of Hollywood is that nobody likes to read. It's true, there's just too many scripts out there. Everyone and their mother think they can write. Producers are swamped with screenplays. You think this, and this is trash? It's unproduced scripts littering LA. Play don't show must be as important for an interactive medium as is show don't tell for a medium based on image. For a video game, this means we want to play it as soon as possible, or necessary for the story. And this intro sequence is all play, don't show. It lasts about 30 minutes or 2 hours if you're a video games journalist, and it does everything right. Establishes the hero, both in strength and weakness, the weakness in particular being Raz's family water curse.
Still got that water phobia, huh?
It's not a phobia, it's a curse. Back in Grulovia, my whole family was cursed to die in water, and
Yeah, super sad. Look at these posters!
It also establishes supporting characters and villains, hidden or open, and with little effort, the world, while at the same time acting as a little tutorial space. We're off to a good start. Good job, Double Fine. With Zanardo rescued, but in a coma, the Psychonauts return to their headquarters called the Mother Lobe, where acting director Agent Forsyth awaits Raz and company. It's here that Raz learns his most important life lesson, to curb his enthusiasm.
If the other agents vouch for you, I might be able to get you a spot in the intern program.
You ruined my life. You ruined my life, okay?
At this point in any story, I like to find a hidden guru. By that I mean which storytelling template, or a combination of templates, if at all, was used to write the initial screenplay for the game. There are many out there, and I have read them all, and they all basically say the same thing, especially when you arrange the blueprint along the midpoint. We'll get to that later. Of course, none of this is an ironclad law. I use these templates mainly to see if there is a symmetry forming, because the beauty of a story lies in its fractal structure. The entire story, its acts, scenes, all the way to every word of dialogue are all fractals of a greater whole. Raz's first foray into the mother lobe can best be described with one word: debate. Everything he encounters is set against him. Debate is a common technique, from the reluctant hero.
No, wait. We do not want any adventures here. Thank you. Not today. Not.
To quite literally a debate.
Maybe we should hit another branch.
You know, you talk like we ain't gonna get away with this.
I've never met nobody got away with anything, ever. You.
To something simple as walking back. No words needed, it's still debate. Joseph Campbell called it refusal of the call, but there is one script guru who picked a debate segment as part of his template, and it's Blake Snyder with Save the Cat. We will use other templates as well as time goes on, but I have a feeling that Save the Cat will suffice for most video game stories. Oh boy, I'm not ready for you just yet. Save the Cat is often criticized for being ridiculously formulaic with exact page counts denoting each beat. For Snyder, the debate segment has to happen between pages 12 and 25 of a screenplay, with the theme stated on page 5 and a catalyst or inciting incident on page 12. In my opinion, the only thing that has to happen between pages 12 and 25 is the same that has to happen for the rest of the pages in your story, and that is whatever the story needs. It just so happens that debate is the one thing that most stories need, and for symmetry, it helps to have the debate before we break into the second act of a story. For Psychonauts 2, before we are fully locked into the story, Raz has to be challenged first. This happens across all layers, from Foresight belittling him to his classmates stealing his clothes as a prank. It's all part of debate. Even a random rat starts arguing with him.
I don't know the code. Rats! Oh, sorry, Harold. You're absolutely right. I should think about how I'm using that word.
Oh my god, they don't make him like they used to. Random NPCs don't want Raz there.
Hi!
I'm sorry. I just hate children.
Geez, lady, I hope your cats and a box of wine make you happy. Heck, the supposed comfort from one of his mentors falls flat. Imagine getting beat up at school and coming home to hear this.
Oh, and don't worry about the other interns, Rescue. Initiation rituals are a common method for a specialized social group to integrate foreign elements while preserving the social exclusivity of that group. Understand?
Thanks, Sasha.
So instead of going on the next mission, Raz is sent to class and has to intern in the mailroom, where he meets his boss, Nick Johnsmith. Well, meets is a bit of a misnomer here. Raz finds Nick in a delivery box posted to Truman Zanotto, and turns out Nick Johnsmith is quite literally a brainless bureaucrat.
Check this out. The new kid killed Nick.
He's alive, but he's brainless.
What we also find on Nick is a key to a room in the Lady Locktopus casino. But of course, since we're still in the debate segment, we can't join on the mission.
Can't we just...
No, all of you, to the interns' bay. Now!
Instead, we're off to class, where the real meat of the debate segment begins. Because it is here that all the remaining beats for the first act are hit. Raz joins the class and is immediately coaxed into some tomfoolery by his classmates. The tomfoolery being that he rewrites Foresight's brain Inception style with his mental connection ability, committing multiple crimes and unethical acts in the process. Little things like brain rigging someone's mind without their consent and jeopardizing the entire mother lobe by sending its director on a reckless gambling binge, because what Raz tried to do was to convince Foresight to take them on the mission. But instead, Foresight starts to think her best shot at solving the Mother Lobe's money problems is by gambling in the Lady Octopus casino.
I think I just figured out how to solve all our money problems.
Yeah, it's a really bad idea. But it is here the two beats are hit with precision. Theme stated, and catalyst or inciting incident. The theme being that there are no shortcuts to Alfie mind. We're quite literally playing this theme out in the classroom and casino levels. And for those in the back who still don't get it, Forsyth blurts it out for good measure.
The Psychonauts. We're not here to change people's minds, Raz. Not here to fix people. We're here to help people fight their own demons. The ones they already have.
If we were to arrange the story of Psychonauts 2 across Snyder's Save the Cat beat sheet, we get the following picture. Opening image, Raz in a boring office job, alone in a cold and uncaring environment. Theme stated, not here to fix people, but help them fight their own demons. Setup, Labata was a victim too. There might be a mole inside the Psychonauts who's trying to resurrect Maligula. Catalyst or inciting incident, we discover our first lead, the key to a room in the Lady Loctopus casino. Debate. Raz belittled and told he's not ready. These are the beats your first act must hit, according to Blake Snyder. Now this is the actual beat order of Psychonauts 2. For a video game, the beats can appear in any order in the first act. What matters is that they appear, because these beats help you flesh out what is known as a character spine. It's not a literal spine in the anatomical sense, it's what makes a character three-dimensional. A character's need and a character's want. What does Raz want? To find the mole and prevent Maligula's return. What is his need? It's what's going to carry the rest of the story, and in Raz's case, he needs to accept that there are no shortcuts, and he can't fix people like gadgets. All this, by the way, is tied to the rest of the story, and little setups are sprinkled throughout the first act, from Raz's hydrophobia to simple tidbits of information which will play a greater role later on.
Wow! Here they are! The Psychic Six. I read all about them in True Psychic Tales #1. Less tragically, but still upsetting. My mom used that issue of True Psychic Tales to line the floor of the world's smallest horse trailer.
Double Fine had almost constructed a perfect first act. Why almost? Yeah, she's a bit uncooked to say the least. She's the only supporting character who is not a broken person in some sense. Her issue is that she got scammed. I'm not making this up. You see, she was so smart to revolutionize the entire field of psychonautics as an intern, only to have her credit stolen by her envious boss. Oh, and she also mastered mathematics on the side, because she is such a genius as she reminds us of that.
I knew I wasn't this stupid. I mean, I have a degree in mathematics, you know?
Now I know this is meant to be tongue-in-cheek, but her background creates a specific character problem. Forsyth suffers from the inverse of what the great Australian method actor Kirk Lazarus explained in the incredible documentary Tropic Thunder. Tell us, Kirk.
Check it out. Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man, look retarded, act retarded. Not retarded. Count 2 picks, cheated cards. Autistic. Show. Not retarded. You went full retard, man.
The inverse is true as well. Never go full genius. Hollywood avoids this by using a simple trick. Jew hatred.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Please, hear me out. It'll all make sense in a second. You see, everything comes with a price attached, including genius level IQ. Eventually that big brain will crush you under its weight, be it through an early onset of existential dread, the inability to connect with normal people, or full-blown psychosis.
Another Jew, by the way. I don't know what I ever did to them, and they're all out to screw me. The Russians and the Jews, they got their dirty little fingerprints all over everything.
Now this is just one way of doing it. What matters is that there is no free lunch. Now for some reason this was completely abandoned for Forsyth. I could chalk it up to some wokery, woke, but the writers are capable of delivering. They gave everyone else a massive character flaw. It also creates a simple but avoidable plot hole. How the heck does a rookie psychonaut like Raz rewire the director's mind? The writers tried to remedy this problem by adding Forsyth's need to fix the Mother Lobe's money problems. You see, she cares so much for this issue, that's how Raz could delude her into a gambling binge. That still leaves us with the issue of how a professional psychonaut was brainjacked by a rookie without any countermeasures in place. And we have established so far in the story that countermeasures do exist. Plus, if she had a real character flaw, a big structural issue later on could have been easily avoided. We'll get to that later in the third act. I'm not even mad at Double Fine here, I'm just disappointed. How can we improve Forsyth to create a perfect first act? Well, first, you can absolutely do a genius character, just don't forget to add the bill. Double Fine did set the stage by Forsyth having the same problem as Raz. She tends to take shortcuts because she is impatient.
Truth is, I pulled a similar stunt once.
Really?
Only the person whose brain I messed with, I couldn't put them right again.
She's talking here about the doctor who stole her credits, but it's disconnected. If they tied this directly to Raz brainjacking Forsyth, it would have linked to Raz's need through gameplay as well. Remember our motto, play, don't show. Her impatience, combined with a sense of superiority, is the reason Raz was able to rewire her mind, by tapping into something deep under her facade. Taking this even further, she could easily fall prey into becoming the all-devouring mother, ruling with an iron fist out of paranoia and mistrust, easily dismissing the normal people around her. Whatever normal means among the Psychonauts. That way, Foresight could also play a more active role, because once the casino mission is over, she becomes more or less nothing but an NPC backdrop. If she was an active false villain, she could easily be a proper obstacle in the real world for Raz to overcome. It would also bring some diversity on the character spectrum, because so far all the Psychonauts are way too nice and seem to always want to do the right thing. Foresight should have been what Liam Shaw was to Jean-Luc in Picard Season 3. Another obstacle. For a brief moment, the writers play with the idea of her being the mole.
By the way, where were you, Hollis, when I was trapped in the...
Oh look, we're landing!
But they do nothing with it. Shame. Afterwards, we play out the final setup of the first act. Raz gains access to the room and discovers two things: a lot of rotten caviar and a Maligula obsession. Whoever is the mole has a keen interest in necromancy, and for now our Psychonauts don't suspect Nick to be the mole. You know, him being brainless and all. Once back at the Motherlope, we hit the final beat in the first act, breaking into two. Truman Zanardo is actually faking being in a coma. He sends Raz on a secret mission.
Listen, Rasputin. Maligula is coming back. And we only have one hope. There's one person who knows how to fight her. You need to bring him here. Bring back Ford Cruller.
Kruller's mind has fractured into multiple personalities, and it's on us to deal with them now, taking us into the second act. And of course, no one can know about this mission, as Raz can't trust anyone because of the whole mole situation.
Truman! You're awake! Hang on, let me tell the others!
No, Rasputin, no one must know. There's a spy among us. We don't know who to trust.
The breaking into two beat has to accomplish two things. A, well, get us into the second act, and B, be invisible. To smooth over the transition into the second act, most stories introduce the B story. From love interests to secondary plot threads, they pop up at the beginning of the second act. And in the case of Psychonauts 2, we can hear the B story from a mile away.
We are the Aquatos! Traveling thrill givers and practitioners of the acrobatic arts!
I love this family. Probably one of the most wholesome depictions of a Slavic family I've seen in a while. Reminds me of my own family from the glorious wonderland of Yugoslavia. Well, before Balkan things happened, that is. Double Fine did a great job with the Aquados. Two things I like in particular. A, they're not just a cheap copy of a modern family for modern audiences based on wherever the developers reside.
I think he's put on a little weight.
I mean, if little children never ran away from home, where would the circus get her workers, huh?
And B, they're at least initially the perfect setup for a B story. For symmetry, it's best if the B story is tied to the hero's need. And for us to complete his quest and uncover his true self, he must come to terms with both his family and their secrets, that being not just the questionable source of the curse, but also the disdain it fuels for the Psychonauts.
How about some
Finish that sentence and it will kill your mother, Rasputin.
I love how all the old people have the shakes in this game. Having worked in a geriatric center as part of my civil service in Austria since they still have the draft, well, in lieu of military service, not because I'm a pacifist, but because they paid more than the military service.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Anyhow, included with the shakes was also a lot of dark and spicy humor. I had one guy who, after having a stroke, reverted to a childlike state of mind. But every now and then his almost 70-year-old jaded real self would come out. One morning I was serving everyone their breakfast and he just looks at me, picks up his butter knife and asks me the following: "Hey kid, wanna know why we get these instead of real knives?" Me being the idiot I am, I just go, "No idea. Why?" He puts the butter knife to his throat and says, "So we can't escape this place the easy way." Ah, good times. I don't think back a lot though, mostly because everyone is already dead from my time there. So on that note, let us segue into my favorite segment in any script, the fun and games section. So what is fun and games? It's the first half of your second act, and it's the place where we get to play with the premise of the story. Blake Snyder described it as the promise of the premise. It's the reason you bought the ticket for a movie in the first place. Take a look at this poster. What do you see? The promise of the premise. Body cop movies are great to illustrate this. That's why we bought the ticket. We want to see how things are gonna play out with the odd contrasting couple. For writers, this is the place to play with the premise, and Psychonauts 2 is no exception. Once we are in the second act and we leave the mother lobe, the game opens up like a theme park, including the music.
Ooh, fancy.
Only thing missing are those misting fans you see in theme parks a lot. From here on we get to play with the premise of Psychonauts 2 without training wheels. Raz now has to fix Ford Krulla, and it's up to us in which order we want to piece his mind back together. I'll list the levels in my play order, but you really can tackle them any way you want or just spend some time with the Aquados in the woods. First thing we do is get a haircut inside Ford Krulla's mind. This level is one of the most interesting ones, because it's not quite clear initially why Ford turned into a barber until you take a good look at the lice. I know exactly who to call when it comes to protesters.
Those young people are about to get a dose of reality.
What all these Krulla levels do great, and I think it's the main reason Psychonauts 2 was praised for its narrative, is that they blend gameplay and story perfectly together. Exposition is almost exclusively done through level design. It's also here that Ford mentions the name Lucy for the first time, which will play an integral part later on.
Sorry, insects, but you're in my way.
What have you done?
Cleaned up the streets?
Those were peaceful protesters, Lucy.
Lucy?
So we get his peace of mind, and back in the real world we have to find a new brain for Nick Johnsmith, so we can get inside the Ford Krulla locked in the mail booth. And the best brain dealer in town is of course Otto Mentalis, the engineering expert of the Psychic 6. He's something of a cue to Krulla's Bond. We head over to his lab and pick the only suitable brain named Harry Heptadome.
So many brains.
All voluntarily donated upon death. I have all the paperwork somewhere.
Heptadome. Remember that name, it'll matter later on as well. We of course jump into Harry Heptadome just to make sure he ain't brain dead. All we find is a mold of light, as all other senses and perceptions of self have atrophied.
Who are you? How long have you been in here? What's your name?
We plug Harry into Nick Johnsmith, and of course, he has a meltdown.
Ball of light. Are you in there?
Light, dark, and every flavor in between. Is this cashmere? It's too delicious!
Or rather, sensory overload. So we enter his mind too.
Ball of light? Are you in here?
This mind is a shroom-induced fever dream. It's great. We bring the Heptadome brain to its senses, quite literally, as we reattune it to its faculties, who all suspiciously look and sound like members of the Psychic 6. Quick side note, what I really love about this game is how each enemy type is introduced. It's solely based on what that mind suffers from at any given moment.
I'm here. Everything's here. Too many things are here.
You're experiencing a sensory overload. Try to stay calm. Whatever you do, don't have a...
Again, great job Double Fine, play, don't show. Once we bring all of Harry Heptadome's senses, we find out who he truly is. Helmut Fullbear, now trapped in the body of Nick Johnsmith. Helmut was the 7th member of the Psychic 6, with abilities honed through his performative arts. Helmut explains he was left for dead in the fight against Maligula, or rather Ford found his brain, saved it in a ball, but forgot about it after his mind fractured.
Why did you all abandon me for 1,000 years?
20.
Maybe in your world?
As it turns out, Maligula was Lucretia Mux, a member of the Psychic 6, or rather Psychic 7, and all traces of her have been wiped. Now I know what you might ask here, but Selvir, isn't this all just show no play? Yes, but here's the key. Would I prefer everything is play don't show, every bit of exposition? Yes. Does it have to be? No. For developers and writers, the elements that always have to be play don't show are the structural beats in the story, your setup, theme, debate, etc. Moments like these are video game equivalents of burying exposition. Nobody likes exposition, it brings a movie to a halt, but it's crucial for a lot of stories, so screenwriters will try to make exposition visually appealing, or use a quirky character or comic relief, something games have done too. All in all, I'd say this was an acceptable level of exposition. Afterwards, Helmut helps us get into the mail booth and we enter another piece of Ford's mind. Here we find out that Ford was in love with Lucy.
What did you say in that letter?
Nothing important, really. Just that I loved her.
And she had to go back to her native land of Grulovia to fight in the war. They were writing letters to stay in touch, and Ford could already sense how the war is changing her. Once done, we're only left with one peace of mind, the bowling alley. Problem is, old Krula will not let us in without the senior pass.
Sorry, Senior League hours. Only members of the Senior League allowed.
The only person who can help us is Compton Boole, another member of the Psychic Six who locked himself in psycho-isolation.
Under office number, it just says psycho-isolation. Why would his office be in psycho-isolation?
Remember Forsyth? And how the writers forgot to add a bill to her genius? Well, they did add a bill to Compton's. Turns out his psychic abilities are so powerful, he frequently loses control over them. And in the worst case, he can blow up anyone around him, unwillingly of course, and he has done so in the past, when he tried to free a bunch of animals from a shelter. He will only help us if we bring him a bee from the woods in the questionable area, because it was Cassie, another Psychic Six member, who always managed to calm him down, and they bonded over their shared ability of talking to bees.
The bees could help. Cassie and I always loved working with bees in the forest. If you could bring me just one bee, I'll bet I could talk to it and find out where my Cassie is.
So, we head out there. This is also where the Aquados have set up camp. We do a few side gigs for our family and try to get that bee. Problem is, the woods are protected by someone, the Green Needle Witch.
Ow! Hey, that's sharp. Lizzie?
Luckily, we get out in time. But we bring more than one bee to Compton, and of course the bees overwhelm him and we enter his mind to help him before things get out of control. We cook a few meals in what is quite literally a reality TV cooking show.
Then Chef had the idea to withhold the salt at just the right moment to create a sense of longing within the yolk.
That's fucking raw, and that's fucking what? Look at the colour of it. Well, I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you a question. What is it? It's overcooked.
The food penetrates Compton's soul and soothes his anxiety. Compton's anxiety stems from the constant judgment of the people around him. Once done, he gives us the senior pass and we get access to the bowling alley. This one reveals just how deep the relationship was between Ford and Lucy. While heavy on exposition, it is all woven into the environment yet again.
Didn't mean to ruin your date!
And finally, we get the last piece of Ford's mind, ending the fun and games section. There is one last piece missing. What does the fun and games section lead to? Blake Snyder called it fun and games because everything the fun and games section builds up to is about to come down on us like Judge Dredd's unrelenting thirst for justice.
Choke on that.
The midpoint is the most important beat in any story. Every story has one, and it must accomplish three things. First, be in the middle. Hence, the name midpoint. If your acts were a tent, think of it as the middle pole holding everything else up. Second, it must raise the stakes. Like rocket fuel, it needs to take us over the second half of the story. And best way to do so is by raising the stakes. And third, most importantly, it needs to hold the first key into the hero's transformation. You see, every story with a three-dimensional character, at least in Western storytelling, is a tug-of-war battle between the character's facade and the character's flaw. With each coming act, usually the facade gives way to the flaw, until there is nothing left visible but the flaw. And our hero is left with the choice of to either overcome the flaw or not. As a side note, this has no implication on how the story ends. That is still up to the writer. Michael Corleone's flaw is all but laid out by the end of The Godfather, but he never overcomes it. He starts self-righteous with a sense of superiority and the need to avoid becoming ruthless like the rest of the mafia. But in the end, Michael still believes his self-righteousness and superiority are justified, and he has become a ruthless killer. So what is coming down on Raz?
Who's that?
That's your grandparents, Laszlo and Marona. They drowned in the Valermo Dam disaster, remember?
What? No! Grandpa Laszlo died there, but Grandma made it out and came to live with my father.
No, Raz, she didn't.
Ford, I just saw her today.
No, you didn't.
His Nona is Maligula. To be precise, she is Raz's grand-aunt. After her crimes in Grulovia, Ford brainwashed her MK Ultra style with a machine called the Astrolabe.
I put her in the Astrolabe, one of Otto's inventions, created to make permanent alterations to the psyche.
He altered her personality and the personality of Augustus, Raz's dad, to accept her as his mother. Even the water curse is technically a strong form of hydrophobia, meant to keep Maligula and the Aquados away from water. And in the end, he used the machine on himself to wipe all his memories of what he actually did. Jesus. Even the CIA would be like, this is too much. Well, maybe not, but at least explains why Nona was going on about how the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. And why she sent all that mail. So the midpoint is not just in the middle, it's tied to Raz, and it also raises the stakes, because the brainwashing is kind of falling apart, and if Maligula regains her memories, it's gonna be a big problem for everyone. The only thing I don't like about this midpoint, and I'll chalk this up to personal preference, is the villain revisionism.
War brought something out in her that should have been locked away.
Maligula.
After the deluge, I brought her back here and closed those doors again, with Maligula on the other side.
You see, Lucy is not evil, she was made evil by what happened in Grulovia. I slightly disagree here, I think Lucy had the capacity for evil always in her, like most of us. Evil is as evil does, and only good people standing in its way will stop evil. And also, there are some crimes you just can't come back from. When I heard Ford's explanation, my mind immediately went to my relatives who survived concentration camps in the Balkans. Imagine me explaining to them, you know, those Serbs who did that to you, they weren't evil, they were just misunderstood and made like that by the world. A shoe would be coming my way with the speed of light. But, that being said, mind modification is possible within the internal logic of Psychonauts 2, to the extent that the evil part of you is quite literally a separate entity which can be buried deep within your mind. The writers don't break their own rules with this, so
I'll allow it.
After the midpoint, we enter the second half of the second act, coined by Blake Snyder as bad guys close in. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Once we get the first key to the hero's transformation through the midpoint, we are set for one destination and one destination only: to burn away what's left of the hero's facade. And the best way to do so is by having the bad guys close in. So, now that Ford told Raz the truth, they'll have to, well, do it again. Fix the Astrolabe and bury Maligula deep within Lucy's subconsciousness. Oh, and where is the Astrolabe? Under the Heptadome. Ha, get it now?
Incredible! This is where the first Psychonauts met. And this must be the Astrolabe.
To fix the machine, we'll need the help of the last two Psychic 6 members, because the Astrolabe is entangled with vines and protected by bees. Again, you can do this in any order. I started with Bob Zanardo, who's also Truman Zanardo's uncle. Bob lives a depressed and reclusive life, for two reasons: his messy childhood and the loss of his husband. Yeah, he's gay. And Helmut Fulber is his husband, or as we call him during family gatherings with the Muslim part of my family, his long-term roommate. After the battle against Maligula, everyone assumed Helmut was dead. Ford did find Helmut's brain and stashed it in a ball, but after using the Astrolabe, his mind fractured and he forgot about Helmut. With Helmut gone, Bob could not overcome this and refused any help, so much that his nephew Truman fired him from the Psychonauts. Now it's up to us to get into Bob's mind, not just to deliver the message that Helmut is alive and well. Okay, he is alive in someone else's body, we can deal with that later, but to also help Bob overcome his childhood trauma. This is one of Double Fine's strongest levels. The Zanardos are famous for their gardens, but once you enter Bob's mind, all you see is a bunch of deserted islands littered with empty bottles. Turns out, after the death of his father, Bob's mother withered away. Bob had to take over all the chores while his mother drowned herself with booze in the greenhouse, killing herself and the greenhouse in the process. You think you're floating on King Kai's little planet for funsies, but you're actually swimming across a booze-filled desert land. Bob is so deeply rooted in his past that his inner child steals the seeds for his potential to grow up. Once we deal with the little devil, we can help Bob take new roots in the present with his long-term roommate. The last Psychic 6 member is Cassiopeia, who happens to be the Green Needle Witch. Turns out she's a beekeeper, and as mentioned before, Compton and her bonded over their ability to interact with bees. Cassie is the only member of the Psychic 6 willing to help us out immediately, but because of what happened in Grulovia, parts of Cassie's personality are at odds with each other. Because Cassie tried to reason with Lucy, without success, obviously, and while Bob held Lucy in place with his vines, Otto was supposed to freeze her with the hyper-hyglaciator. However, she broke free and tried to kill Bob, only for Helmut to jump between the two and get frozen inside the lake when the glaciator went off. Now I can see why one might start to question their own judgment. When confronted with a genocidal mania, Cassie tried talking it out instead of doing the obvious thing.
I started blasting. Bang!
Oh, and if you ask yourself how Helmut lost his brain, well, he used a super sneeze powder that ejected his brain from his body. Yeah, it's a thing in this world. Super sneeze powder. I think that's what 80s Hollywood producers called their Colombian fairy dust of joy. Cassie believes a personality is made up of a multitude of personas and the actions they exhibit. So hers are based on past events from her life. An arrogant writer, a disciplinarian librarian, a motherly teacher, and a shifty counterfeiter. Raz also discovers his last psychic ability in this level, the archetype. But the little guy has no name, so I like to call him Jordan.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
With Jordan's help, we're able to put the warring personas back together and bring peace to Cassie's troubled mind. Now with Bob and Cassie back in the game, we get rid of the vines and the bees so we can activate the machine. From here on, towards the end of the second act, two things will usually happen before we hit the third act. The All is Lost moment and the breaking into free beat. These two make up a segment called Dark Night of the Soul. It is here, finally, where the facade is burned off and the hero either changes by killing off the flaw or death awaits. That's why a mentor figure often dies or departs at the All is Lost moment. Let's use The Matrix as an example. I want to show you how it's done right before we examine how Psychonauts 2 did it, because it is here where the first cracks begin to show in the story structure. What happens at the midpoint in The Matrix? The Oracle tells Neo he is not the one, and immediately afterwards Cypher's betrayal leads to Morpheus getting captured and half the crew dying. We hit the All is Lost moment. Even after killing Cypher, Neo and Trinity are left with the dire decision to pull the plug on Morpheus as the machines are trying to extract the location of Zion from Morpheus. That's the whiff of death. You see, the mentor does not have to die. The reason he so often dies is not about the mentor, but the hero. The hero must overcome his flaw, and an actual death or the whiff of death are a reminder of that inevitable decision. And it's true for every hero, be it Neo or Elf.
I don't belong anywhere.
So how does Neo overcome his flaw? Remember when I said the first key to the hero's transformation is revealed at the midpoint? Well,
the Oracle, she told me this would happen. She told me that I would have to make a choice.
The theme was stated in the first act in The Matrix as well.
Do you believe in fate, Neo?
No.
Neo's flaw is his lack of faith in fate, but him making a choice is fate. Neo lived a lie all his life, but even after unplugging from the Matrix, he was still living a lie. It is here that he meets fate, when for the first time in his life, he makes a conscious decision to act. And it's here where we hit the last beat of the second act. We break into three when Neo follows his decision with action.
Guns. Lots of guns.
Most people think the three-act structure is a steady rise towards the climax, but in reality it is more akin to a rising sinus curve. What this means is that the breaking into three beat is often the polar opposite of the midpoint. If the hero fails at the midpoint, he succeeds at the breaking into three and vice versa. Neo had a negative midpoint, so his second act ends on a positive note. What about Raz? Technically, Even if the reveal is negative, Raz did succeed at the midpoint by piecing together Ford's mind. So after turning on the astrolabe, we jump into Lucy's mind. Here we relive Nona's deepest and dearest memories of her time with the Aquados. But at the end, what awaits Raz is sewage and filth. All the genocidal, murderous tendencies kept at bay by a rickety dam that looks like it's already halfway through falling apart. Our goal is now to help Ford tear down the dam so we can blast Maligula deep into Lucy's subconscious with the astrolabe. But we are suddenly pulled out of Nona's mind by none other than Truman Zanaro himself, since one of Raz's classmates snitched on us, not knowing it was Truman who sent us on the mission. Given how suspicious Truman acts, we enter his mind too, and yeah, as probably most of you expected, Truman ain't Truman. Shocker, I know.
Whoa, Lily. Your dad was a really big fan of Nick from the mailroom.
Well, most people are. Except my dad. My dad once told me he thought Nick Johnsmith was an obsequious little lickspittle.
Lickspittle?
That's how my dad talked. My real dad.
Turns out Truman is actually Gristel Malik, son of Fyodor Malik, the last Czar of Grulovia. Fyodor was the one who used Lucy to quell the protests. Gristel, in the meantime, was completely oblivious to the suffering around him. The Maliks fled Grulovia just in time before it was destroyed by Maligula's flood. They had enough wealth with them to live out the rest of their lives in the Lady Lactopus casino. Eventually, Gristel ran out of caviar, and it's only then that he began to resent his lot in life. He wondered why couldn't they go back to Grulovia, and Fyodor blamed the Psychonauts for its downfall.
I'm going to restore a whole country to greatness. A country that your heroes, the Psychonauts, tore apart.
Fyodor's last revelation to Gristel was that Maligula is still alive. Gristel concocted a plan, infiltrate the Psychonauts as Nick Johnsmith in hopes of finding out where Maligula is, so she can restore Grulovia to its former glory. And since Truman was growing suspicious of Nick's friendliness, he needed Labaro to swap his brain.
The fake smile, the donuts. You don't even walk like a normal person. You glide like a fucking lizard on ice.
Surprise, motherfucker.
So yeah, the guy's a narcissistic douche with levels of entitlement that dwarfs the one of my generation. His level is, well, all about him and how great he is.
Land of plenty, land of love, our fatherland shall rise above. So blessed we are to have a sword and all
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
If you want to see the insides of an Instagram influencer's mind, well, play this level. Another thing I really love about this one is that it's free of the enemy type regret, since Gristel is, well, free of regrets. Good job, Double Fine. The remaining Psychonauts from the Mother Lobe join up since they are able to sense Maligula's presence and all hell breaks loose. Maligula sucks them into a water vortex, Lily runs away, and Raz in his desperation is left with only one option: find and join up with his family. And this is where the second act basically just fizzles out. The memories of Raz's dad come back and it's taking a toll on him. The game cuts to black and we are in... There is barely any. The third act in Psychonauts 2 is utterly rushed and amounts to just an hour of gameplay. The most important moment of the second act and the beginning of the third happen off screen. Worse, off play. There is no Dark Night of the Soul. Technically, there is not even a decision or action that leads us into the third act, which is odd because what's left of the third act still follows Blake Snyder's structure for the third act to a T. Gathering the team, Raz and the Aquados join up, executing the plan. Raz is hoisted up and tossed into the vortex where he enters Maligula's mind, and his classmates aid him in the fight against Maligula. Hightower surprise. Raz discovers what's left of Nona inside Maligula. Nona explains to Maligula she killed her own sister during the deluge of Grulovia. Maligula becomes even more powerful after the revelation.
What do you listen?
I killed my sister.
I might not be your real grandmother.
I killed my sister.
But you're still my family.
What's so that? I kill lots of people.
dig deep down, Nona offers Raz everything she got. Executing new plan, Raz and Nona team up to take down giant Maligula. The structure is still there, because story is structure. So what happened? Tim Schafer and the Crucible of Development hell happened. Now I like Tim, as a creative and a screenwriter myself, but as a business person, maybe not. There's a whole 22-hour-long documentary on YouTube following Psychonauts 2's production hell. I'll keep it brief here. Basically, it's no surprise the game had to be rushed out. And I commend Double Fine for really only faltering in the third act. Now, in case you're wondering, do they have to fix the third act? Aren't people happy with the story as it is?
We don't do that here.
With each playthrough, the cracks became more apparent. For one simple reason, you can't escape structure. Let me reiterate, story is structure. Even a movie like Memento, told backwards and despised by Blake Snyder himself because he thought it broke the mold. Memento ended up fitting neatly into Snyder's mold as well. We're still in the infancy of storytelling in video games. The reason most video game stories suck, and I'll make a separate, more detailed video on this, and also why Ludo narrative dissonance is an utterly useless concept, and anyhow, I'm getting sidetracked. The reason is that we still lack the tools to weave the narrative during development. We are like the Russians in the early 20th century playing around with montage and composition in Battleship Potemkin. We're just beginning to scratch the surface of what's possible. So let's bring it all home. Let's imagine Double Fine had access to Microsoft's endless money pit from the get-go. So Microsoft sends one of their demon people with a bag full of cash to Tim, telling him, remember when I said symmetry is the beauty of a story? Well, it's more than that. Symmetry is your way marker. If you fix Foresight, you fix everything else. Imagine Foresight had been the devouring mother all along. This way we would have two bad guys closing in on Raz and friends. Crystal Malik disguised as Truman Zanardo and Hollis Foresight. The Dark Night of the Soul would be the following. Truman comes to Foresight after having set up Raz. He frames Raz as the mold and the Psychic Six as the illusionaries hellbent on resurrecting Maligula. This wouldn't surprise anyone given the Psychic Six's shared history with Lucy. Foresight overreacts and puts everyone involved under arrest. It's already established that you can override psychic powers with Psilirium. Truman uses the ensuing chaos to awaken Maligula as Foresight's Psychonauts arrest Raz's Psychonauts. All is lost. Maligula is out of control, causing carnage. The Motherlobe goes into lockdown with anyone capable of stopping her under arrest. Raz is completely lost, as his flaw of looking for a shortcut is laid bare, unsure what to do in this mess of epic proportions. Breaking into 3. Remember, symmetry is your waymarker. It tells you what to do in each act, in each scene, with each piece of dialogue. Who is still left out of the equation? The Aquados and Raz's classmates. The classmates rescue and bring a devastated Raz to the Aquados, and it's here where we do a reversal. All the Aquados enter Raz's mind to fix Raz. It makes sense. They already have Raz's moveset to navigate Raz's mind, and all the Aquados have some psychic abilities. So together they fix Raz. This way all the characters are involved in the story and connected to Raz's need. But most importantly, connected through gameplay. Because right now, similar to Foresight, the Aquados and the classmates are nothing else than NPC backdrops. Or rather, with the exception of Nona, they're relegated to little side quests, and only 2 classmates are used for side quests at all. A scavenger's hunt functioning as collectibles and the defusing of some psychic machinery, which adds 3 more combat encounters. We enter the third act. Raz, his family and classmates must infiltrate the Motherlobe and make Foresight see the error of her ways, so she releases the arrested Psychic Six. Problem is, no psychic energy can go in or out since the Motherlobe went into lockdown. So, Raz, now having overcome his flaw, must enter the Motherlobe without any psychic abilities since he always relied on them as a shortcut. He goes all out Grulovian, infiltrating the Motherlobe and letting everyone else in to confront Foresight. What ensues is a Hightower surprise boss fight. Foresight throws everything she has at Raz, but her big brain is nothing compared to the combined power of family. It is here that Foresight finally gets her dude moment. Well, this dude moment.
I think I might be nobody.
Wow. The insecurity level with you guys is ridiculous.
We dig deep down as Foresight is hit with a final revelation to overcome her problems. She understands she helped cause this mess in the first place by diminishing the people around her. She lifts the lockdown, releases the Psychic Six, and everyone teams up for a final confrontation against Maligula, matching what is already in the game. And that's the storytelling of Psychonauts 2. It's not perfect, but it's good. Good enough for me to spot the screenwriting techniques used when telling its story. Psychonauts 2 basically jump-started this entire channel. So let's see if we can give it a rating. Beginning with structure. With an uncooked foresight, a second act that just fizzles out without a proper Dark Knight of the Soul segment, and a rushed third act, best I can do is 3 out of 5 Billy Wilders. Next we got pacing and tone. Now this one also relates to gameplay. Tone is pretty much hit consistently and overall pacing is well done, but replayability is hurt by the structural issues mentioned before. With each playthrough the cracks become more visible, and I think this is an element where single player games would benefit the most from. 4 out of 5 Mia Finchers. Yeah, I couldn't decide who to pick, Miyazaki or Fincher, so Mia Fincher it is. Next we got dialogue. This one is fairly straightforward. 4 out of 5 Tarantinos. The dialogue sounds natural and flows well. Only thing I would have liked to see is more distinct speech patterns, because outside of Sasha, all the Psychonauts are quite interchangeable when it comes to their dialogue, and the voice actors have to do the heavy lifting. A simple trick to improve this is to read the dialogue with the names covered. If you can't spot the difference, the dialogue needs more work. Also, I think it didn't help that all the Psychonauts are so nice, it just informs the speech patterns in similar fashion. Finally, we get synchronicity. This is basically how well everything comes together. Is the enemy selection, level design, combat, sound design, etc. informed by the game's premise and theme? Absolutely. Psychonauts 2 nails this with each level being someone's mind and every enemy whatever is going on during gameplay in each mind. Plus, locations, collectibles and NPCs are all informed by the game's premise. 5 out of 5 Carl Jungs. Pulling the average, this gives us a final rating of 4 out of 5 Jeff Keighley's for Psychonauts 2. Yes, the Dorito Pope himself is a perfect representation of my utterly unbiased rating system. And that's it everyone. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoy playing Psychonauts 2 as much as I did. The game certainly deserved its praise and I hope Double Fine continues to build on what they already have. Consider liking and subscribing, hit that notification bell and let me know in the comments what other games you would like to see a breakdown of. I'm curating the content calendar and I'll try my best to keep this release schedule up. Also, now seeing the full picture, what do you think about both Psychonauts 2 and story structure? Do you think Save the Cat as a structure makes sense? Let me know in the comments. And what do you think of Maligula and the nature of evil portrayed in the game? Because I only know one thing for sure. Life is suffering, but Chevapi helps you transcend it. Through heart disease.
Oggi sono